Hi, this is Connie Giordano with Walking in Truth Ministry. Join me now as I deliver this stirring message from God's holy word. The Biblical Illustrator has a message for us today. It is this: a man ought not to be carried to hell by his surroundings. Many a man has lived in a crooked generation and adapted himself to it most completely. And many a man has lived in a crooked generation and kept straight all the way through it. If your generation is crooked, that is no reason why you should be. But if you would keep straight in this generation or in any other, you have got something to do about it. Your responsibility is for yourself in spite of your generation. If your generation is crooked, see that you don't crook with it. In response to this sobering message, allow me to ask you a few questions. First, are you presently living in a crooked generation? If so, have you adapted yourself to it most completely? Have you believed the lie that you couldn't help but crook with it? Or recognizing your responsibility for yourself, have you kept straight all the way through it? Before answering these questions, perhaps we need to define what a crooked generation is. It is mentioned 3 times in the Bible. In Acts 2:40, the Apostle Peter ended his sermon on the day of Pentecost by solemnly testifying, "Save yourselves from this untoward generation." In Philippians 2:15, the Apostle Paul admonished the believers with these words, "That ye may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom ye shine as lights in the world." And lastly, in Deuteronomy 32:5, after Israel corrupted themselves among the nations, Moses referred to them as being a perverse and crooked generation. So, according to the Bible, how would you define an untoward or perverse and crooked generation? From the start, we can say that an untoward generation is crooked. Crooked is the word from which the English scoliosis, curvature of the spine, comes. An untoward generation is morally crooked, deviated from the standard of God's holy word. It is also perverse, straying so far from the narrow path that its deviation is severely twisted and distorted. Hence, it is corrupt in principle and wicked in conduct. It is untoward, meaning not toward, unruly, intractable, and difficult to guide, manage, and work with. It can be described as rejecting and denying Christ, walking contrary to God and man, being wedded to sin, and seeking every opportunity to retard the cause of truth and righteousness. Knowing this, I ask you, while living in this crooked and perverse generation, have you as a Christian adapted yourself to it most completely? Or have you kept straight all the way through it? Sad to say, so many believers have united in the plans, designs, and feelings of this untoward generation. So many have come under the corrupting influence of its opinions. In the name of unity, they have become like the slimy serpent, crawling along, never in one line, from this side to that side, seeking to serve two masters, the culture and God. Or in the name of compromise and wanting to fit in, they have become like the drunkard, reeling and staggering from side to side instead of going forward on the narrow path toward God. On the day of Pentecost, Peter called the people to repent and then added this warning: save yourselves from this untoward generation. In other words, he called them to preserve themselves from the influence, opinions, and fate of this generation, not to blend in as so many are seeking to do today. He called them to forsake wicked and profane persons in their ungodly courses rather than join them. In Philippians 2:15, the Apostle Paul defined the testimony of the church in saying, that you may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom ye shine as lights in the world. As a Christian, in this untoward, crooked, and perverse generation, you are to be pure, unmixed, unadulterated with its sin and sinful practices. You are not to blend in, to sing their songs and dance to their music. You are to be without rebuke, suffering no moral damage by having contact with the world. Instead, you are to have a wholehearted, unmixed devotion to do God's will. Amidst the crooked and perverse nation, that is, right in the middle of it, you are to shine as lights in the world. You are to show your spiritual character amid a dark culture as the sun, moon, and stars shine in the dark sky. Against the blackness of night, your life is to lighten the moral darkness of the world. Does it? You are to be a star whose light penetrates the spiritual darkness of the perverted world. Does it? How can that happen when you are blending into the culture? Just how bright is your light? Has it been dimmed by the ways of the untoward generation? I leave you with a quote from Charles Stanley. If our behavior as God's children does not differ from that of unbelievers, then we look just as crooked and perverse as anyone else. And instead of shining as lights, we leave the world as dark as we found it.